What is up guys, welcome back to another GeekaWhat video. Today I'm going to be using these parts behind me to build a $700 gaming PC build for 2020. Once again you join me from my brand new studio space, which means there's loads of room, an overhead camera angle, and I even got some new prints on the wall. Without any further ado though, make sure to get subscribed if you aren't already, but let's jump into the build. As with all of my builds, we're going to kick things off first with our motherboard, CPU and RAM. Get three components out the way from the beginning. Now the motherboard I opted to go for is MSI's B450 Pro VDH Max. This board is not only great value in a compact micro ATX form factor, it's also got 4 RAM DIMM slots for upgradability, a PCIe Gen 3 slot, and supports Ryzen 3000 chips out of the box, so you've got no BIOS updates or anything like that to worry about. Into the motherboard we're going to install our CPU, and this here is the AMD Ryzen 5 3600. With a base clock speed of 3.6 boosting up to 4.2 GHz, it's also got 6 cores and 12 threads, which covers the single and multi-threaded bases more than nicely. For the RAM in this build, for the third component of our motherboard assembly, I've got a new contender today. This is from Kingston, if I could open the box, and this is their HyperX Fury RGB. I'm on good understanding that this is some of the best value RGB RAM around, and with Kingston stuff, you really can't go wrong. Line the notch on the memory up with the notch on your motherboard, and it will simply drop into place just like so. A bit of pressure, but you haven't got to force it or anything like that. I almost used the wrong slots there, but you want to essentially use the second and fourth slot for dual channel performance. While I remember at this stage you also want to install your CPU cooler, I've opted to stick with the AMD stock cooler as it does a great job and doesn't cost you any extra money. We can do this by simply removing the pre-existing mounting hardware on the top of our motherboard. Then it's a simple case of lining up the right way round each of the screws with the holes on your motherboard and fastening it down corner by corner. With the motherboard placed nicely to one side, we're going to grab the case and this bag of goodies that comes in the back of the case. This is all the mounting hardware we need to install our motherboard into the chassis. Talking of the chassis, this here is the Aerocool Bolt Mini. It's one of the cheapest cases on the market, yet has a bit of RGB at the front and a legitimate tempered glass side panel. There's no plastic at play here. What I've then gone and done is strip the case back of its front and rear side panels, which is going to make it nice and easy to work with. Before screwing our motherboard in, you want to clip in the I/O shield. This comes included with your motherboard and just sits nicely at the back of the case. Now that's all done, we're going to slide our motherboard in and screw it down using the included screws that we got in our case goodie bag. And just like so, the motherboard is in place, which moves us nicely, onto our next component, which is our power supply. Now this is also from Aerocool, and it's their Aero Bronze 600 watt. Truth be told, any 600 watt 80 plus bronze certified power supply from a reputable manufacturer is going to work pretty good for this build, but this unit is cheap, affordable, and has these nice black cables as well, so we haven't got any of this horrible ketchup mustard to deal with. With the build really starting to come together, that leaves us with our final two components, and arguably the most exciting of today's system. The first is our storage. I think for a build like this, just opting for a singular SSD is a great bet. If you need some more capacity, pick up a Seagate Barracuda hard drive, but this Kingston A400 SSD is going to do the job nicely. I'm also going to be installing our graphics card, which is the MSI Radeon 5500XT. This is one of the brand new Radeon graphics cards, and I'm super excited to see just how it performs. Look at that. I mean, that is pretty stunning. With 8GB of VRAM, a bit of RGB on the top, but kind of a stealthy black and red colour scheme, it's going to work perfectly in today's build. All we've then got to do is line the graphics card up with our PCIe slot, and with a little bit of pressure, it will line up nicely into place. Happy days. All that's now left to do is do a bit of cable management, boot the system up to see exactly how it looks, and then benchmark a load of titles so you guys can see exactly how it performs. So hang tight, buckle in, and roll the time lapse. It's now time for some gaming benchmarks to install a load of the most popular games on this machine and see whether or not I did a very good job. And spoiler alert, I think you're going to be quite impressed. Kicking it off with Apex Legends here with very high settings, we're seeing around 80 frames per second. I ran pretty much all these games at 1080p high settings, as I think that is where this machine best performs. If you want to hit over 100 FPS in Apex, tone down some of the settings and you can get that kind of esports ready performance which so many of you always seem to ask about. One thing I did notice though is just how good this game looks. It looks fantastic at 1080p with that high visual fidelity and creates a really impressive and immersive gaming experience. The next title on my list is Fortnite. I mean, are you Team Apex or Team Fortnite? Let me know in the comments below. Let's get a bit of a battle royale wars going on down there. Here with epic settings, we're looking at 90 to 105 frames per second, depending exactly on which bit of the scene has and hasn't been rendered and how much action there is. AKA, if you're any good and you're shooting people, your FPS is probably going to be slightly lower. Next on the list is Overwatch. I'm addicted to this game. I've said it so much recently. It is so good and so fun. I think that's what I love about it. At ultra settings, you're looking at 150 plus frames per second at 1080p, which clearly means this 5500XT isn't really struggling. You can probably go up, well, you can go up to 1440p, high settings, and still get over 60 or 70 frames per second. But as I said, I think most people building this are going to be gaming at 1080p, and I can't benchmark every game at every resolution. If there's any game I'm more addicted to than Overwatch, it's got to be Call of Duty's Modern Warfare. This is completely free to play, at least the Battle Royale is, and you can download it and not pay a penny. Here with kind of varied settings, I let it automatically pick what it thought was best for the system, and you'll be able to see those on your screen. It was around about 110 FPS. Needless to say though, the settings on the whole were on the higher end and the visual experience was fantastic. I think this game is just so fun because it takes the Battle Royale characteristics we originally saw in kind of Hunger Games Minecraft and brings them to a game with really good tried and tested shooting mechanics and also a massive player base because loads of people love Call of Duty, loads of people are playing the Modern Warfare Battle Royale, and you know what, I'm going to say something, I think it'll be more popular than both Apex and Fortnite in the long run, but let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Moving on to some less shootery games, we'll come back to those later. Forza Horizon 4, a game that looks, I think, fantastic, and a game that, if it supported ray tracing, would be even better, but we're not talking about RTX in this video. Forza Horizon 4, ultra settings, around about 90 frames per second, which is bonkers. I always use the inbuilt benchmark mode, as it means you can flick through any of my other PC builds and compare and contrast, not just Forza Horizon 4, but many of the games on my list today to see exactly kind of what settings and what resolution and how much money you need to spend to get the gaming performance you deserve. Next up on the list is Battlefield 5, another game with, you guessed it, a Battle Royale mode. I'm going to be honest, I'm not quite as keen on Battlefield 5. I think it's the most realistic of any of the games on my list today, and the frame rate was nothing to complain about. High settings, 85 to 92 frames per second. Before I finish off the last few games on my list today, I need to give a shout out to MSI, who not only hooked it up with this really cool 1440p curved monitor, which allowed me to benchmark all the games super easily and in style, they also sent over this Vigor GK30 gaming combo. It's a great value keyboard and mouse combination with RGB lighting, and it looks sick. Moving back to a racing title, Project Cars 2, I don't quite like it as much as Forza Horizon 4, but it's definitely a different kind of game. It's a bit more professional, a bit more legit. High settings, 140 frames per second. I use the Dubai Aerodrome map with either a Ford GT or a Mustang, I never remember what car it is, but once again it means if you want to flick through my previous builds, it might be a bit boring, I might be playing the same map all the time, but you can easily compare, because obviously different maps have different things to render in, different shadows, different obstacles, different kind of renderings basically, which means your frame rate may differ, but it shouldn't shift anywhere below 100 frames per second at 1080p, regardless of how you play and what map you are on. And finally, to wrap up my list of games today is CSGO. It's a bit of an older game, but it's a classic. Everyone loves a bit of CSGO. I did do offline with bots, mainly because I don't have time when I'm benchmarking to run through a big online game. And it means that the extra computer power that the bots take to actually kind of load in does lower the frame rate slightly, so your results may be even better. 1080p, high ultra settings, 200 plus frames per second. So obviously, you know, this machine's got more than enough power for CSGO. If you're just buying this system for CSGO, then you probably could save a bit of money and spend a bit less, but you can get a really great visual experience and get the frame rate. You haven't got to sacrifice and go to lower settings in order to still get that esports level FPS. But I think that pretty much wraps it up for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please give it a big old like rating and make sure to get subscribed and ding dong that notification bell if you haven't already. Thank you very much for watching though, and as always, we'll see you in the next GeekaWhat video.